Welcome back. Today I wanted to talk to you about that hero. You know, that hero that you always want to have in your team. The one that follows you around and keeps healing you while you can deal damage or do whatever else you're good at. So you could be stealing treasures and being hit, and then that guy heals you. In Myth, that guy is called the Acolyte. So today, meet the Acolyte. In Myth, the Acolyte has a unique mechanic just like every other hero. His unique mechanic is Faith. So based on his Faith, he can power off about half of his cards. So that's a very important thing for him. You can gain Faith by various ways. The first one is on the hero cards themselves. Some have the Faith keyword, so you can add them up and see how much faith you have for a given hero cycle. The hero himself has one base faith, so no matter what card you play, you always start with one faith. So to that first faith, you add every faith keyword on the hero cards you've played in your action spaces. And then to that, you can add some equipment also have faith. So we'll see a bit later on in the examples, but some cards have faith, so you can add that up also. And there's also a special hero card in his deck, the Prey card, that allows him to increase, it's kind of a gamble, but it allows you to increase the faith you can have for a given cycle. So that's one of the cards I'm going to show you in the quick faith example you're about to see right now. Alright, so let's have a look at how faith works for the Acolyte. The first thing you need to know, you always get your one basic faith no matter what you're doing. So you have one faith for your hero himself, and then you can add up to that faith. And the faith isn't actually a resource you spend, it's really something you have at a given time. And any card you play that has a power that benefits from faith gets to use it. So it's not something you expend, it's pretty much like Rage, where you just something you have and that affects some of your cards. So as an example, if I wanted to play Angelic Word, which gains plus 1d10 for the dice pool based on faith, so plus 1d10 per faith. And if I played it right now, that would simply give me one additional d10. So I would roll 1d10 for myself, 1d10 for my Worn Prayer book because it's a relic, it has a relic keyword. 1d10 for the book, and 1d10 per fate, which I only have one fate right now, so that's one extra d10. If you have a look, some items actually increases your fate. So this armor is one of them, so it adds plus one fate to my basic fate. So now I actually have two faith. So I would roll 4d10 because one for my book, one for my hero, and one per fate, which I have two of. But if I want to increase my faith before I play that card, then what I can do is play cards that have the faith keyword. So such as Feet of the Saints, I could be playing this one that has a faith keyword. So now I have a faith of 3. And so if I play Guardian Angel now, I would get an extra d10 for that card. But I can, the Acolyte has a special hero card that adds even more faith to the fate pool, if you will. It's the Prey card. When you play that card, what it does is it allows you to shuffle your discard pile and draw 3 random cards from that pile. Every card that has the fate keyword gets added to your fate pool. So if I draw 3 cards right now from my discard pile, I got Righteous Fury, Smite, and End of the Father. So Smite does not have the fate keyword, so I would discard it again. But I would keep those 2 cards and simply add them, which is why the Prey card has the stacked keyword. I would just put them down there. You don't actually get the power of those cards, you simply add the fate keyword of those cards. So that adds 2 fate to my fate pool. So I now have 2 3, 4 for being a hero. So I get plus 4 d10 based on fate for Guardian Angel. Sorry, Angelic Word when I play it. So that's one way to do it. And you could even play second prey card and do the same thing again. Shuffle again your discard pile and draw 3 cards. And this time I gain no fate. So I picked up 3 cards that don't have fate. So the prey card itself doesn't do anything. If I had been a bit luckier, I could have grabbed that Attend a Week card that has the fate keyword. But that brings me to a good point to make. It's again very important in Myth to be aware of what cards you've played in between 2 hero deck shuffle, so that you have a good idea of what's in your discard pile and what's still to come in your draw pile. And it's especially important for the Acolyte because you have to kind of keep track of how many cards in your discard pile have the fate keyword and how many of them don't have it. So you kind of know in advance what are the odds of you increasing your fate with a prey card. Alright, so now that we have a better understanding of fate, let's have a look at the character himself. So he's very much the support character or the medic if you're more of a online first-person shooter player. He's the medic, or in Dungeons and Dragons he's the cleric, but in Myth he's the Acolyte. So he's pretty much your healer. He's also the buff character, so he can increase, give you additional dice to your attacks. He can reduce your target number to hit enemies. He can increase your target number to be hit. He can do a bunch of things, and also he can kill enemies. So he's probably a lot better at with his spells. So he's a ranged spellcaster. So he can kill either one bigger guys or a bunch of smaller ones. We'll see in a few minutes with the cards. But he also has some melee attacks. In the starting deck, in the first 25 basic cards, he can't do much with his melee weapon. So the main hand item in your hero slots, the primary slot, isn't all that useful at first because you'll always be or almost always be using the secondary slot. So the first item is the Worn Prayer Book. But eventually, the way you choose to advance your character still at the novice level, you'll be able to include to double the number of melee cards. So we can go from 2 to 4 melee cards. So he's still probably better at range, but he can have great cards because the other 2 cards are actually pretty good cards. So it's one way you can move a path you can follow for with the Acolyte. The Acolyte also has on some of his hero cards the Holy keyword. The Holy keyword basically removes the resurrect ability from the undead enemies. So he's, of course, as in any dungeon type game or Dungeons and Dragons game, the cleric or the Acolyte here is the better character against all undead enemies. The card is Consuming Fire. That's also a new concept we haven't touched on in the 2.0 series so far. That's the damage over time or the dot. So we'll get to it when we get to the power. Movement modifiers can grant you extra fate dice for that one. You can't use the card if you have moved aggressively. It's a 1 damage card with a range of 3. And you've got a couple keywords. So Relic again, meaning you use your secondary item slot. And it has the fire keyword. For now, I believe it doesn't do anything specifically, unless maybe there's an enemy that's immune to fire. So if that were the case, or if it becomes the case, then I guess that card won't do anything to that specific enemy. So it has you target 1 enemy within your range of 3. If you hit on top of the first damage the card itself does, depending on your faith, you add a dot or damage over time to that enemy. So you can keep track of that dot with a d10. So what I usually do is just place the die on the damage track on the darkness board, with showing the number of how long that dot will last, just as a reminder. So basically that dot for consuming fire lasts one refresh phase per fate you have. So again, if you have a lot of fate, you can pretty much make sure the enemy will eventually die with that single card. That said, if you wait for that card to kill a monster, if it has something like 8 vitality, it's possible that a card would kill it if you have 7 faith when you play it. So the card itself does the first damage. That's when you gain threat, by the way. So you gain the first, or you gain a single threat for that card because you've dealt 1 damage. But then the dot damage, what happens during each refresh phase, during the status step of the refresh phase, that damage would not add to your threat, because that's not damage you're dealing yourself, even though it's because of your card. But that's one of the great things about dots. They take a long time, or they can take a long time to be effective, but at least the extra damage you're generating with your dot does not increase your threat. So that's good. So as I was saying, if an enemy had, say, 8 vitality, you could kill it with that single card, but it would take 7 refresh phases, and that's only if you have at least 7 faith when you play that card. So odds are you're going to try to add damage to it, even though the consuming fire keeps going. So you could kill that monster faster because of it. But the downside to dots that I usually find with my games anyway is that we kind of try to get rid of the monster anyhow before the dot actually kills the monster. So I wouldn't say it's very effective, but against bosses it can be very effective, because at least you're still generating damage to that boss, even if you can't hit him on a given turn. So they're not my favorite cards, but they're still pretty good. Hand of the Father. You can only play it if you don't move at all in the hero cycle. That's the mass heal, if you will, of the Acolyte. So basically it has a range of the whole tile, so you can affect any hero present on the same tile as you. And it simply heals 3 vitality to a varying number of hero. So that's possibly what can be confusing about the power description in the card. So just know you always heal 3 vitality, but to a varying number of heroes. So if the card itself heals 1 hero, okay, so try and follow me. The card itself heals 1 hero. You can affect 1 more hero per faith you have. So, and the card itself grants you 1 faith. So you can at least affect 2 heroes, right? And don't forget you have your basic faith. So you can at least affect 3 heroes. Any additional faith on top of the 2 faith you have, the basic one and what the card grants you, allows you to heal more heroes. So it's fairly easy to heal up to 5 heroes. So if you have a full party of 5, it's fairly easy to heal 3 vitality to each of those heroes. And on top of that, it grants every affected hero an extra d10 for all rolls. So that's a very important very important thing you can easily miss. It's not, as it's usually the case, plus 1d10 to attack actions, or sometimes to attacks. In that case, it's plus 1d10 to all rolls. So if you need to roll to disarm a trap, plus 1d10. If you need to roll to pass a courage test, plus 1d10. If you need to roll to make an attack action, plus 1d10. An attack reaction, plus 1d10. A counter attack as an interrupt card, plus 1d10. And any other plus 1d10 I missed, plus 1d10. So, and you gain 4 threat for that card because it's a pretty good card, and it costs you 2 AP. The next card is Last Rites. That card is possibly the most misunderstood card in the Acolyte deck, based on various forums reading I've done. So I'll try and spend some time with it, just to make sure everybody understands it. So if we start again with the movement modifiers, you can see that you gain a various number of additional D10s or -1 D10 if you've moved aggressively. But the good thing is you can still use the card even though you've moved aggressively. So you can pick and choose your movement based on what you want to do with the card and how much D10 you think you need, because this is an area of effect card, attack card. So you'll possibly need more than 1 D10 to hit every different monster type and target number combination, or I should say monster type rank combination. They changed that in 2.0. The card itself deals 1 damage to every target caught in the area of effect, because remember, the friendly fire is on in that game in Myth. So if there is a hero or multiple heroes within the area of effect of the card, they also get hit for 1 damage. You have a range of 4. We'll get back to the range now, how to apply that range in a few seconds. And the card is a holy attack, so again, against undead, it's a very good card. The card allows you to attack 1 target within range, so that's the range of 4. That's how you measure the range of 4. So you choose 1 space within 4 spaces of you. And the attack also affects a number of or squares equal to your faith. And the pattern of the attack is a cross. So you're going to end up with a big plus or a big X on the map, depending on your faith. The only restrictions you have on how that area of effect develops is that it always turns clockwise. So you have kind of an idea on the card itself, how it plays out. But we'll go over a couple examples just to make sure it's easier to understand. And so the things you need to remember before we start is you need a range and a line of sight to the initial target of the attack. Not every square within the area of effect. So range and line of sight to the initial square of the attack. You can definitely attack diagonally. So the pattern on the card presents itself as usual in a straight line, but you can definitely do it diagonally. And that's one of the things I think that confuses people, because if you look at the pattern on the card, while the pattern is accurate, you could wrongfully think that you can attack through that an enemy that would be on the square that's marked with the 3. But in fact, in that case, to legally play that card on the target square in front of the arrow, the space with the 3 would need to be empty. So you can play it in that situation, but there can't be any enemy, or at least enemy in the space 3. If it's a hero, you can do it because you can attack, or you have a line of sight through other heroes, but you would also hit that hero. So it's your choice. But so let's have a look at a couple examples of how that card plays, just to make sure everybody understands it. So as I was saying, you need line of sight and range to the initial square of the attack, and then you add 1 additional space or square in your area of effect based on your fate. So there's no real limit to how many squares you can affect. If you have, say, a fate of 3, you end up affecting a total of 4 spaces. If you have a fate of 12, you end up affecting a total amount of 13 spaces. And the way it works is in a cross, or the additional spaces are placed in a cross pattern. and you always need to turn that cross or add those spaces clockwise. But you get to choose which is the first space of the attack, or first additional space. So if you place it on the right of the target, the initial target, then you would keep turning around clockwise and adding more squares. So if you have 4 faith, you end up with the same pattern that you have on the card itself. If you have 5 or more faith, then you would add more spaces, still turning clockwise. So you would add a second additional square next to the first one, and then a second additional space next to the second one, and so on. And as I said, there's no real limit to just how much or how many spaces total you can target. And as I was saying, the tricky part with Last Rite is that usually if you want to affect a lot of enemies, you need to find an angle so that you can target the initial space of the attack. So you can't really do it in a straight line. I mean, it's doable, but if you do, you know you're gonna miss, you won't optimize the amount of enemies you target, because necessarily there can't be any enemies in front of you, unless you have an item that allows you to attack through enemies, of course. So that's Last Rite. It costs 2 AP. It is guided by the light. The card itself adds 1d10 and 1 fate dice because, as I was saying earlier, you haven't moved during the interrupt or the darkness cycle. So you get plus 1d10 plus 1 fate dice for that card. It's an active interrupt card because, as you will see, it's a counter attack. So basically it deals 1 damage within the range of your weapon. It's a counter attack, so and you still need, even though it's not worded exactly like the other counter attack cards in the varying or in the other hero decks, you still need to be attacked. So you receive an attack, whether it's successful or not is irrelevant, but you need to be attacked to be able to play Guided by the Light. But as soon as you resolve the attack, at least one attack targeting you, you can play that card. It's a counter attack. You simply attack one target. It doesn't have to be the same one that attacked you. You can just hit the next guy that was supposed to attack you afterwards, just to reduce the number of attacks you'll receive in the darkness cycle. And remember, on the smite card, what it says, if you play Guided by the Light, it makes every smite card, as long as Guided by the Light is in play, it makes every smite card an interrupt card. So you could actually, if you have the 2 smite in your hand and you decide to play all 3 cards, you could receive a single attack, then play Guided by the Light to make a counter attack with plus 1d10 plus 1 fate dice, and then play another smite card, or play the first smite card, target another enemy, and then smite, target another enemy. So you could actually kill 3 guys or hit the same enemy 3 times during the darkness cycle. So that's fairly good, although smite costs you AP, so it's always a risk reward thing to spend AP during the darkness cycle. So like I did with the soldier, I wanted to show you an item that I think needs a bit more clarification. It's not that it's very complicated, it's just a small thing I wanted to add. I think the card itself is fairly simple. You always have plus 1 faith, so this is not related to attacks. So it always applies no matter what you're doing. You have plus 1 faith, so it adds up to your basic 1 faith for your hero. So you basically always have 2 faith when you have that shield equipped. For your attacks, it grants extra dice. It has a plus 1 target number, defensive target number against ranged attack only, which is why it has a little star by the plus 1. So that plus 1 is only for ranged attack. And the thing I wanted to talk about specifically on that card is the power prey card, resolve as a prey card ability of the Fate recipe. So if you roll that recipe, you get to resolve as if you had played a prey card. So you shuffle your discard, draw three cards, and add that much fate to your current fate. And that fate you can keep until the end of your hero cycle. So it's not only for the attack you're resolving now, it's something you keep for the rest of the hero cycle, which you'll lose it during the next deck phase. So simply add those fate card on top of your hero board, and once you hit the deck phase, just discard them again with the rest of your played hero cards, and that's when you lose that fate. Alright folks, that's all for this video. I hope you now better understand how to play the Acolyte and how strong the Acolyte actually is, and also how much I appreciate the Acolyte in my party. And until next time, it's been a pleasure.